No one in the town of Willow Creek had much faith in Elijah Moore, a single father working long shifts at the local mill. Elijah lived a quiet life with his 8-year-old daughter Sophie, after losing his wife to cancer just 2 years prior. People pitied him, yes, but more often, they ridiculed him. His clothes were worn, his boots patched, and his car barely sputtered down the street. It was no secret he was struggling to keep afloat. So, when the news spread that Elijah had inherited a dilapidated farmhouse from a distant uncle no one had even heard of, the town exploded in cruel laughter. A junk heap in the middle of nowhere, they scoffed. Typical Moore luck. To everyone else, it was a worthless wreck, just another dead-end path for a man who couldn't seem to catch a break. But to Elijah, it was a flicker of hope. Sophie was the only one who didn't seem to mind. "We'll fix it up, Daddy," she said cheerfully, as they drove out one morning to see the place. The old farmhouse stood like a skeleton against the rising sun, weather-beaten boards, creaking porch steps, windows that looked like hollow eyes. The lawn was overgrown, rusted barrels littered the field, and the place reeked of abandonment. Yet, despite it all, there was something unexplainably captivating about it. It had character, history, maybe even purpose. Elijah took a deep breath and walked his daughter inside. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling like ghosts, dust lay thick across the floorboards, and parts of the roof had caved in. But Sophie twirled, with joy in what she declared would be her new room. "Oh, it's our castle," she giggled. Elijah smiled faintly. He didn't have the heart to tell her that the inheritance came with taxes he couldn't afford and a structure barely standing. But somehow, her optimism gave him strength. He decided to clean it up bit by bit, even if everyone else saw a lost cause. Neighbors drove by slowly, smirking. Local kids dared each other to approach the haunted house. A few offered sarcastic remarks. "Found any ghosts yet, Elijah? Gonna flip that dump for $1? He ignored them all. Every spare moment after work, he brought tools to patch walls, placed broken windows with salvaged glass, and cut back the thorny vines that strangled the property. Sophie painted flowers on the mailbox and tied red ribbons to the gate. They brought life back to the ruins, one loving act at a time. One day, while clearing the basement, Elijah stumbled across a strange rusted hatch beneath a rug. It had no handle, only an iron latch and a padlock long corroded shut. Curious, he had tried to force it open, but it wouldn't budge. Over the following days, he returned with tools, a crowbar, a grinder, even borrowed a metal cutter from the mill. The whole time, a strange thought gnawed at the back of his mind. Why would someone hide a locked trapdoor beneath the floorboards of an old farmhouse? When he finally cracked the seal and pried open the hatch, a gust of cold, earthy air swept up from below. Elijah shone his flashlight inside and saw a narrow ladder descending into darkness. Sophie watched silently from the stairs as her father slowly descended. The air was thick and musty. As Elijah reached the bottom, his boots touched dirt and his flashlight flickered across brick walls, not the crumbling stone of a root cellar, but carefully laid masonry. It wasn't just a hole in the ground, it was a hidden chamber. And then, in the far corner, he saw it, stacks of wooden crates, aged but sealed tight. He dragged one up the ladder and pried it open with trembling fingers. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth and velvet, were ledgers, gold coins, deeds, and maps. Elijah stared, speechless. A note fell from the top of the pile. It read, "For the one who dares to rebuild what was lost, the reward of vision and faith." He spent the next few weeks carefully documenting everything. The ledgers revealed that the farmhouse once belonged to Silas Moore, a genius inventor and prospector who, during the gold rush era, struck rich veins in California and Nevada. Unable to trust banks, Silas had returned to Willow Creek and hidden his fortune beneath his home. Over time, as family ties broke and generations passed, the secret was forgotten until Elijah uncovered it. Experts were called in, historians verified the documents, appraisers gasped. The estate was worth over $50 million, including land, deeds, rare coins, and unclaimed mining patents that were now incredibly valuable. The media descended on Willow Creek like a swarm, Overnight, Elijah became a sensation. But what stunned people the most wasn't the fortune, it was how Elijah had worked tirelessly. Humbly, even when mocked and shunned, to bring life back to something everyone else deemed worthless. The richest man in town, they called him now, not for his wealth, but for his heart. Yet Elijah remained unchanged. He used part of the money to restore the farmhouse to its former glory, turn it into a museum honoring Silas's legacy, and created a scholarship fund for struggling single parents in small towns like his. He never forgot the days of struggle, nor the people who laughed. And he taught Sophie that real wealth lies not in what you inherit, but in how you see the world when no one else does, and that, dear viewers, is only half the story. In Chapter 2, the mystery deepens, because buried in the heart of the farmhouse lies something even greater than fortune. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the shocking truth that even Elijah didn't see coming. Life had changed for Elijah Moore and his daughter Sophie in ways neither of them could have ever imagined, and gone were the days of skipping meals or rationing heat during the winter. Gone were the whispers of pity and laughter behind his back. The once broken man was now at the center of national attention, hailed as a hero of resilience and humility. The farmhouse that had once been dismissed as a crumbling wreck now stood beautifully restored, painted in soft whites and warm wood accents, proudly standing as both a museum and a monument to hope. Reporters came and went. Offers for book deals, documentaries, and talk show appearances poured in. But through it all, Elijah remained grounded. He built a quiet life with Sophie on the land his ancestors had once walked, carefully curating the legacy of Silas Moore, the mysterious great-uncle who had left behind the $50 million treasure. Yet despite the comfort and peace that now surrounded them, Elijah couldn't shake the feeling that something still lingered in the bones of the house, something unsaid, something watching. And then, one rainy evening, that suspicion became undeniable. It happened while Elijah was cleaning the old attic. With Sophie away at a friend's sleepover and the house eerily silent, he decided to finally tackle the last untouched part of the farmhouse. As he pushed aside rotting insulation and boxes filled with brittle newspapers, his flashlight beam caught something strange, a seam in the wall that didn't match the others. The boards were slightly misaligned, the nails too new, as if someone had sealed it shut not long ago. His heart pounding, Elijah pried it open. Behind the wall was a narrow staircase leading down not to the main floor, but to a completely separate passage between walls, hidden from the home's original blueprints. It was dark and suffocating, the air thick with dust and time, but he pressed forward, driven by the same instinct that had led him to the underground chamber before. After a short descent, he reached a small wooden door, sealed with an iron handle. Taking a breath, he opened it, and what he found inside stole the very air from his lungs. It was a hidden room. Roughly the size of a shed, the walls were covered with handwritten notes, equations, sketches of machines, and strange symbols. Tables were covered with odd tools, aged parchment, faded photographs, and journals. Dozens of them. It was a secret lab. Not just Silas Moore's hiding place for wealth, but his workshop, his mind immortalized in ink and invention. As Elijah slowly turned through the pages, he began to understand that Silas had not simply been a rich prospector. He had been something far more, a visionary inventor years ahead of his time, a man whose discoveries could have changed history had they been revealed. There were designs for energy systems, maps of underground tunnels, coded messages, and references to something called Project Genesis. One journal stood out. It was marked with a leather strap and stamped in gold with the symbol of a tree growing from a gear. Inside, Elijah read of a final chamber Silas had built, something he had sworn to keep secret even from his closest allies. It was described not just as a vault, but as a cradle of memory. The last line of the journal read, "If ever you find this place, you are not just my heir, you are my continuation." That night, Elijah couldn't sleep. His mind raced through the possibilities. What if the true treasure wasn't the gold, but knowledge? What if Silas had discovered something the world wasn't ready for? He returned to the lab the next morning and followed the directions sketched in the journal. Behind the back wall of the chamber, there was yet another secret panel, sealed with a mechanism shaped like a compass. After carefully aligning the dials based on coordinates in Silas's notes, the wall opened to reveal a narrow stone tunnel that spiraled downward. As Elijah descended with only a headlamp and his heartbeat for company, he realized this tunnel had been untouched for over a century. It ended in a large iron vault door, etched with the same tree and gear emblem. With effort, he opened it, and stepped into a chamber unlike anything he had ever seen. The room was circular, with polished metal walls that gleamed like starlight. In the center stood a large machine, a device of spinning glass discs, gears, copper coils, and something that resembled a generator fused with a library. Around the machine were small drawers filled with glass tubes, and inside each one, fragments of what looked like crystal. A note lay on the control panel. "These are memory shards," it read. "Encoded from my mind, storing knowledge, experience, visions of a future that never came." Elijah was stunned. Silas hadn't just left behind gold, he had found a way to encode human memory into crystallized data, something that scientists today were only beginning to explore. The machine was a prototype, a memory archive, a time capsule of thought. Elijah inserted the first shard and activated the machine. A projection filled the room, Silas himself, life-sized, moving, speaking. "If you are seeing this," Silas said, "then you carry the fire. My discoveries were too dangerous in my time. The world was not ready, but perhaps now in your hands they may become something more." Elijah sat in awe as the hologram played on, revealing theories on sustainable energy, teleportation, disease eradication, even artificial consciousness. But Silas's final message was different. It wasn't about invention, but legacy. The world sees treasure as gold, but the greatest treasure is knowledge passed with purpose, from one who dreamed to one who dares. If you're my kin, then you've already endured. Don't just inherit, ignite. In the weeks that followed, Elijah quietly worked to decipher more of Silas's discoveries. With the help of trusted scientists and engineers, he began funding a secret think tank focused on clean energy and advanced tech. The $50 million had given him a platform, but this machine gave him meaning. And as the inventions inspired breakthroughs in schools, medicine, and underprivileged communities, Elijah saw firsthand what Silas had meant. The true treasure wasn't buried gold, it was the power to change the world. Seated in a forgotten house and watered with faith, as the farmhouse became a symbol not just of restoration, but of innovation. Elijah turned the lab into an educational exhibit for kids, including Sophie's class. She beamed as she told her friends, "My dad found a secret machine that helps people." And when asked how he stayed humble despite it all, Elijah would only smile and say, "Because the greatest riches are the ones you pass on." The townsfolk, who once mocked him, now came to his talks, stood in line to tour the home, told stories of how inspired they were by the man who turned junk into genius. And to those of you watching, if you've made it this far, then perhaps something inside you is stirring too. Maybe you're facing a storm, or a mockery, or a chapter of your life that feels like it's written in failure. But let Elijah's story remind you, sometimes the world calls it worthless, but you were never meant to follow the world. You were meant to find your hidden room, dig deeper, dream harder. You never know what treasure or truth lies just beneath the surface. Subscribe. Now for more stories that reveal the magic behind the ordinary. And remember, every broken thing has a secret. Every humble beginning holds a spark. Don't just watch the fire, be the one who lights it.